Hey guys, tonight we sail off the coast of ancient Greece, where the wine tastes a little too good, the gods travel incognito, and pirates have no idea what they've signed up for. Imagine the sea breeze brushing your face, the salty air thick with the scent of cedar planks and damp rope. You're standing on the deck of a rickety old ship, rocking gently with the tide. The horizon glows orange-pink in the late afternoon sun. Everything feels still, eerily still. And then he climbs aboard. The man looks like he's wandered out of a festival and onto the wrong vessel. Barefoot, tunic soaked, hair messy but weirdly elegant, like he's just rolled out of an expensive bed in Olympus. Ivy trails casually around his shoulders, like a live fashion statement. You can smell crushed grapes every time he moves. No one knows where he came from. He wasn't on the beach, wasn't seen rowing out, and definitely didn't pay for passage. You know this is going to go badly, and yet you stay pretending to untangle some fishing net so you don't look too suspicious. But let's be real, you probably won't survive this if you're one of the crew. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The pirates gather on deck, squinting at the newcomer. There's something off about him, but they can't put their finger on it. Maybe it's the way his eyes shimmer like wine just about to spill, or maybe it's that he hasn't said a word, and still everyone feels like they're being watched by something far older than the sea. He finds a barrel to sit on and just waits, humming to himself, not the panicked, pleading tone of someone kidnapped. No. More like he's waiting for the music to start. You glance over the side of the ship. The water's a little too calm, like it's holding its breath. One of the pirates, let's call him Theo, leans in and whispers, "Probably some noble's son. Ransom money." They laugh, already counting imaginary silver. You, on the other hand, are now eyeing the stranger's hands. His nails are stained purple. His palms are calloused like he's spent a lifetime crushing grapes, not steering ships. Mainstream historical fact? Here you go. In ancient Greek culture, Dionysus wasn't always considered one of the main Olympians. He earned that spot, literally fought his way into the 12-seat club, took Hestia's chair according to some accounts. A god of wine, madness, fertility, and theater, basically a one-man festival. A fringe tidbit? Dionysus was born twice. His mother Semele exploded. It's a long story. And Zeus stitched the unborn baby into his thigh to carry him to term. So yeah, this dude has some baggage. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was imported from Thrace, Phrygia, or was a homegrown Greek god all along. Some think he's a fusion of several older deities, a kind of divine remix. Others believe his wild, ecstatic rituals hint at a shamanistic origin that predates the rest of the Olympian pantheon. But right now on this boat, he's just a silent man with a knowing smile. The pirates pretend they're not nervous. One brings him water, which he politely declines. Another offers stale bread. He accepts it and eats slowly, as if it's a feast. You notice he hasn't blinked once since he boarded. And then, the ropes. They try to bind him, just in case. Theo tosses a length of hemp across his shoulders and starts rapping. You try not to look, but you can't help it. The rope slips from his hands like it's coated in oil. No matter how tightly they try to bind him, it unravels. Coils twisting like they have minds of their own. He's got some kind of trick, one mutters. A sorcerer? The sea gives a long, deep sigh. A gull cries and then nothing. Silence. You feel it before you see it. The wood of the deck warms slightly. Damp patches bloom around the stranger's feet. The air thickens with the scent of ripe grapes. Something's fermenting, and it's not just the mood. He hums again. This time, you recognize it. It's a lullaby your grandmother once whispered when the wine had been flowing, and the stars were just right. But how does he know it? Then you notice it. The man is not alone. Ivy, previously decorative, now begins to grow, twisting gently around the mast, clinging to the rails, creeping across the deck like green veins on a white marble statue. And that's when he finally speaks. "Beautiful day for a voyage," he says, voice soft and shimmering. "But I fear you've chosen the wrong passenger." Pirates laugh again, but their voices crack. You stand frozen, holding your breath, heart pounding so hard it feels like part of the ship's rhythm. He turns to you, smiles. Would you like a drink? You don't answer. You can't, because right there, spilling from the cracks between the planks at your feet, is deep red wine. Not water, not rain, but wine. Rich, fragrant, and bottomless. The barrels haven't burst. The jugs are intact. This is something else. You close your eyes, because somewhere in your bones you know, the ship is no longer yours. And this god, this smiling stranger, is far more than a man with good taste. You try to act casual, but your feet are sticky with wine, and the deck smells like a vineyard after a festival. The pirates are murmuring now, arguing in tight little clusters, each one pretending they're still in charge of the ship. But you already know they've lost it. The man, no, the god still sits calmly on his barrel, fingers drumming a soft rhythm that the sea seems to echo. Theo, the one who first suggested ransom, steps forward with false bravado. We'll be dropping anchor soon, he says, voice cracking. We've a buyer waiting, big pockets. You'll fetch a good price. The god cocks his head like a curious animal. Is that so? He says, smiling gently. And do you think he'll pay more than I will? The pirates laugh again, but it's thinner now. You glance around and realize you're the only one not speaking, maybe the only one listening. The wine is still seeping across the deck in slow, lazy ribbons. It pools near the helm. One of the younger crew reaches down to taste it, shrugs, and takes another sip. It's good, one of he mutters. Like, really good. Mainstream historical fact. In classical mythology, pirates were often portrayed as greedy, reckless men who ignored omens and insulted gods, a narrative device the Greeks loved. They symbolized chaos and disrespect, and their punishments were always poetic. These weren't Jack Sparrow types, more like the guys who'd sell your grandmother for a purse of bronze. The pirates here fit the mold too perfectly. Greedy, impulsive. Not one of them even considers that their passenger might be divine. And you can't help but wonder, why don't they see it? Fringe tidbit. Ancient sailors used to believe dolphins were sacred. Some even thought they were the souls of lost mariners, or divine messengers sent to guide ships. It was considered terrible luck to harm one. Doing so could summon Poseidon's wrath. So if this story ends with pirates turning into dolphins, it's more than punishment. It's transformation, maybe even redemption. Historians still argue whether myths like this were based on real sailor superstitions or served as moral plays for land dwellers who never saw the ocean. Some say they were warnings wrapped in poetry. Others believe they were tools of control, reminders that the gods were watching, even at sea. Back on the deck, something changes. The sails flutter, though there's no wind. You glance up, shielding your eyes. The sky has gone. Still. Not dark, not stormy. Just motionless, like someone hit pause on the clouds. The air hangs heavy. Even the gulls are gone. Theo barks an order. Secure the mast. No one moves. The youngest pirate, maybe 15, still hasn't shaved, looks at his hands. They're trembling. It's the rope, he says. They're growing. And they are. The vines that crept politely across the deck are now climbing the rigging, wrapping the mast, threading through the sails like green veins. Tiny clusters of grapes dangle, growing right before your eyes. You want to step back, but your boots are stuck in wine-soaked planks. The scent is intoxicating, not like a tavern. No, it's older, wilder. It smells like harvest festivals, wild dances, forgotten songs. It smells like memory. The god rises, slowly, deliberately. His tunic shifts, shimmering with unseen patterns. It's not stitched from fabric. It's a cascade of wine-dark shadows, shifting like liquid. Perhaps, he says, looking at no one and everyone, I should show you what happens when you steal what isn't yours. Theo reaches for his blade. You almost admire the guy's consistency, but it's too late. The wood groans beneath your feet. The deck begins to ripple, not in a sinking ship kind of way, but in a breathing, alive kind of way. Vines burst through the cracks, coiling like snakes, wrapping around barrels, sliding up the pirates' legs. No one screams. They should be screaming, but they're not. One pirate stumbles back, eyes wide. His lips are moving, whispering something over and over. Not human, not human. The youngest tries to run. He makes it as far as the railing before his feet slip on the wine. He hits the planks with a dull thud. But instead of helping, the god tilts his head and watches. You wanted me as cargo, he says softly, so now I'll give you a voyage. The ocean swells, the ship tilts. You grasp a rope, not a vine, a real rope, and cling tight. Around you, the crew begins to panic. Finally, they pull out weapons, scream at the god, curse the sky, but nothing works. The wine rises now, not just flooding the deck, but spraying like mist into the air. You inhale it. It tastes like dreams. The pirates begin slipping, stumbling, not from the liquid, but from something deeper. Their bodies shimmer, just a little. Arms twitch, legs buckle. Something glistens on their skin. You see it first on Theo. His fingers stretch, elongate, darken. His nails fall away. His skin pulses. Then his feet, no longer feet, slap wetly against the deck. Panic in his eyes. No words now. Just the glint of a dorsal fin slicing through the last of his humanity. One by one, the pirates dive overboard. Some are already half transformed when they leap. Others seem to vanish mid-air, splashless, like water is swallowing them whole. You rush to the side, looking down. The sea is alive with movement. Sleek shapes spiral and dive, chittering like excited children. Dolphins. Dozens of them. Maybe more. But they don't swim away. They circle the boat, watching. The god returns to his barrel, now the only clean space on the deck. He sits, picks a grape, pops it in his mouth. You realize you're the only one left. And he looks at you. Curious, well, he says, you stayed. You want to speak, but your throat is dry. No words come. The vines begin to retreat. The wine drains through the floorboards, vanishing like it was never there. The sails fill with wind again, normal wind. The god smiles again, soft and strange. I think you'll enjoy the rest of the story, he says. And just like that, the ship steadies. The sun creeps forward again in the sky. And you, still trembling, still breathless, realize you're not going home yet. You remain frozen near the mast, legs damp with drying wine, trying not to blink too loudly. The god, because there's no denying it anymore, leans forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. He looks perfectly at ease, like this is just another lazy afternoon on the Aegean, like he hasn't just transformed a dozen human beings into sleek marine mammals with a flair for dramatic timing. He smiles at you again, that same maddening, knowing smile. It's not malicious, not kind either, just entertained. The ship glides forward now, sails full, as if it were simply obeying him. No one is steering. The sea seems to understand where it's going. You edge a little closer to the helm just to feel like you're doing something. He watches you do it and chuckles, not unkindly. Still pretending you're in charge? He asks, head tilted. You shrug. Makes me feel better. He laughs, a real bright laugh that makes the seagulls return in a flurry of noise and feathers. Somehow, their cries sound like applause. You'll do, he says, stretching lazily. I'll keep you for now, as a witness, or maybe just for the company. A chill passes through you, but not from fear. It's something older. Reverence, maybe. Mainstream historical fact. Dionysus, unlike many Olympian gods, traveled widely. He wasn't tied to Mount Olympus in the same way Zeus or Athena were. His myths are full of movement, caravans, ships, exotic lands, and initiates following him in wild processions. In some accounts, he journeyed all the way to India, spreading his cult through mystery rituals and wine-soaked conversions. He wasn't just the god of wine, he was a god of going places. Fringe tidbit, his followers believed he could dissolve boundaries, not just between gods and mortals, but between sanity and madness, male and female, life and death. Dionysus wasn't a god you worshipped. He was a god you became, if only briefly, during a night of frenzy. His rituals weren't temple-based. They happened in forests, in caves, on mountaintops, usually with no pants involved. Historians still argue whether Dionysian rituals were primarily religious, therapeutic, or just socially sanctioned excuses to lose your mind in public. Some scholars view them as a necessary pressure release for rigid Greek society. Others see them as deliberate attempts to touch the divine through ecstasy in altered states. Back on the ship, the transformation is over. The vines have wilted back into the wood, the grapes have vanished, the deck smells faintly of wine and wet rope. You're still trying to understand what just happened, but he doesn't seem to care about your confusion. Instead, he stands and stretches like a cat, muscles fluid under that shimmering tunic. "Would you like a story?" he asks, suddenly behind you. You jump. He grins wider. "You just told one?" you say, cautious. "Oh no," he says, waving a hand. "That was an incident. This will be a story." And then he begins. He talks about how he was born, twice, first from Semele, a mortal woman too bold for her own good. She asked Zeus to show himself in all his godly glory. Big mistake. Lightning, smoke, screaming, charcoal. She didn't make it. But the unborn Dionysus? Zeus scooped him up, fetus, potential, godling, and sewed him into his thigh. "Best seat in Olympus," Dionysus says now, chuckling. "Bit of a tight squeeze, though." You blink. "So, you gestated inside your father's leg?" "Got out just in time," he replies, deadpan. "Any longer and I'd have been a shin god." You snort despite yourself. He grins like that was the reaction he wanted. He goes on, voice soft, like waves lapping against the hull. Tells you how he was hidden as a child, raised by nymphs, how he discovered wine, not just as a drink, but as a way to unlock joy and madness and truth. "You see," he says, leaning over the railing, "everyone thinks I'm about pleasure, but it's really about release. The moment when you drop the mask and let go." He glances at you. "You've done that before, haven't you?" You look away. Because yes, you've had those moments. Nights when everything fell away, when the sky spun and you laughed too hard and cried for no reason, when you felt like you might dissolve if someone touched you too gently. He nods like he's heard your thoughts. "That's where I live," he says. "Between the real and the too real. Between your name and whatever you scream when you forget it." You glance around. The sea is golden now, sun hanging low. The ship still sails itself. No dolphins in sight, but you're sure they're out there lurking. You dare ask a question? "Why dolphins?" He hums, pleased. "It's poetic," he says. "They were greedy, selfish, thought only of profit. But now, they move in pods, help lost sailors, save drowning children. Some even say they sing." He smiles. "Punishment and gift. They get to live. But not as themselves," and you say. "No one stays as themselves forever," he says gently. "Even you." You don't ask what that means. He stands again and walks the length of the ship barefoot. Ivy doesn't grow this time, but it wants to. You can feel it in the grain of the wood. He hums a song without words, and somewhere, far off, a dolphin clicks in time. He turns to you one last time before vanishing below deck. "Get some rest," he says. "The next part's messier." You sit alone on the deck, heart still racing, brain still spinning. The sun dips behind the waves, the ship rocks gently. The wine scent fades to salt, and in the water, just barely visible in the moonlight, a pair of dolphin eyes watch you. You wake with a start, if you ever truly slept. The sky is darker now, stained with streaks of indigo and violet. A scattering of stars trembles just above the horizon, and the sea whispers a lullaby too old to understand. You sit up slowly, bones stiff from the wooden planks, your breath clouding the air even though it isn't cold. Something about the atmosphere has changed. The ship sails on, smooth and silent, as if skimming a dream instead of water. And there, standing near the bow, silhouetted against the sky like a statue in motion, him, Dionysus. He's different now. Barefoot still, of course, but robed in something more regal, deep violet robes with golden thread glinting like constellations. A thyrsus, a staff topped with a pine cone and wrapped in ivy, is cradled in one arm. He looks like a high priest of mischief, a god on holiday, or perhaps on the verge of rewriting the rules. "I promised you a story," he says without turning around. "Something about tigers." You blink. "Tigers?" He smiles, eyes dancing. "Oh yes, not exactly native to the Aegean, are they?" And with that, he raises one hand, and the ship responds. The wood creaks, but not from strain. It's more like it's rearranging itself. The mast shudders, Vines slither once more, not in menace this time, but invitation. They draw you forward, curling into railings, coaxing you to listen. And he begins. You know me as wine and madness, Dionysus says, but I'm also theater and spectacle and performance. Sometimes the best way to reveal truth is to hide behind a mask. He taps his staff once. The deck beneath your feet ripples. For a second, you're standing on soil, not planks, but dry earth. Dust kicks up under your boots, and far off in the distance, drums begin to pound. You're not on the ship anymore. Not really, you're there, wherever there is. It's a procession, wild and joyful. Women in flowing robes dance barefoot, their hair loose, heads thrown back in laughter. Men painted in wine-stained symbols beat drums and flutes. No one leads. Everyone moves. The earth trembles with rhythm. Mainstream historical fact. The Dionysian mysteries were a real thing. Ancient Greeks held festivals called the Bacchanalia, some public, many secret, where participants would drink, dance, and perform ritual reenactments of Dionysus's myths. It was believed that in doing so, one could transcend the mundane and momentarily become divine. Fringe tidbit. In one of his stranger myths, Dionysus crossed the Euphrates River by transforming a team of leopards, or tigers depending on the source, into his personal chariot pullers. He didn't ride horses. He didn't need horses. Just summoned a couple of big cats and said, "That'll do." No reins, just vibes. Historians still argue whether these wild animal stories are symbolic or taken literally by followers. Were the tigers metaphorical, allegories for the untamed, or actual terrifying imports from the East that stunned Greek observers? Some think the image of the tiger-drawn chariot was a blend of Persian exoticism and Dionysian flair. A way to say, I'm not just a local god, I'm everywhere. Back in the vision, or memory, or illusion, you watch as Dionysus himself appears, younger than he is now, though still otherworldly. His hair is crowned with ivy and grapes, his eyes lit with something ancient. The crowd parts to let him through. At his side walk two great cats, striped, sleek, and massive. Not lions, not leopards, but tigers. Real ones. Their muscles ripple like living flame. One yawns, revealing teeth long enough to make any mortal rethink their life choices. The people cheer. The tigers purr an unnerving, bone-deep rumble. Dionysus raises his thyrsus and the wind shifts. The whole landscape moves. You're back on the ship, mostly. You sit down hard against a barrel, the drums still echoing faintly in your chest. Dionysus is watching you now, grinning like a magician who just pulled the moon out of his sleeve. That actually happened, you ask, heart still thudding? Who's to say, he replies. I've found that memory and imagination taste exactly the same in the right glass of wine. He twirls the thyrsus once and it sprouts leaves on cue. Show off. You like animals, don't you? He asks suddenly. You pause. I guess. Then you'll love this part, he murmurs. See, I don't just turn people into animals for fun. That's an oversimplification. I show them what they already are. It's a kindness, really. Sometimes the skin doesn't fit until it has fins. Or fur. You shudder slightly, glancing over the railing. The ocean is still, almost too still. Somewhere beneath it, you know dolphins are swimming. You wonder if Theo still remembers his name. You seem thoughtful, Dionysus says. I'm wondering when you'll turn me into something. He considers that for a long moment. Not everyone changes in the same way, he says. Some people turn inside out without a drop of magic. Some do it at funerals. Others at weddings. Or while standing in line for figs. You nod slowly. So, what do I turn into? He leans in, nose inches from yours, eyes bright as molten glass. We'll see. Then he leans back, flops casually onto a coil of rope like it's a chaise lounge, and plucks a fig from somewhere. You don't ask where it came from. The sky above is swirling now, purple bleeding into gold. Clouds shaped like masts drift overhead. Tragedy, comedy, something in between. You wonder, how much of this will you remember? And how much of you will be left when it's over? Rest, Dionysus says again, mouth half full of fruit. Next stop, the vineyard, and the beginning of belief. You lie back, staring at the sky that shifts with every blink, lulled by waves, wine, and the quiet purring of invisible tigers on the wind. You awake not to sunlight, but to laughter. Soft at first, then louder, and then wild. It's the kind of laughter that makes you sit up straight without knowing why. Unchecked, joyful, just this side of madness. You push yourself upright, back stiff, head fogged with sleep and fermented dreams. Ship is gone. Well, not gone, just different. You're now floating through thick morning mist, no horizon in sight. The planks beneath you are warm, sun-soaked, and lined with dew. The sails still hang, but they shimmer faintly with a silkier weave. Somewhere in the distance, bells chime lazily, as if rung by tipsy monks who forgot the time. Dionysus stands at the prow again, back to you, robe now open at the chest, vines twined loosely around his arms. He hums and the sea responds. Not with waves, but with a stillness so perfect it feels almost tense, like a held breath before a performance. You stagger to your feet, bracing yourself on the nearest rail. Below, something moves fast and slick. A flicker of silver, a ripple of muscle, a glint of a curved back slicing water. You lean closer, squinting. Dolphins. Dozens of them still circling the vessel like orbiting moons. One breaks the surface and turns just slightly, eye catching yours. And you swear, there's something human there. Not pain, not pleading, just recognition. Then they dive, and the sea swallows them again. Fitting, isn't it, Dionysus says without turning, that those who tried to sell me ended up swimming in my wake. You nod mutely. You don't have the vocabulary for irony at this altitude. Come, he says, we're nearly there. And then the fog parts. You've seen vineyards before, rows of vines, green hills, the buzz of bees, and lazy summer light. But this is something else. The island ahead is gold and green and impossible. Grapevines stretch like veins across rolling hills, curling over ancient stones and sun-bleached altars. Trees bloom with fruit you've never seen, shapes and colors that defy description. At the center rises a temple, white marble wrapped in ivy, glinting like a dream just beyond waking. The ship drifts into a bay without anchor or oar. As you step off, the dock greets you with the scent of crushed grapes, rosemary, and wet soil. Your legs wobble. The earth feels more alive than any dock should. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greek wine culture was central to both daily life and sacred ritual. The symposium, part party, part philosophical salon, was where men gathered to drink, debate, sing, and occasionally offend the gods. But Dionysus wasn't just the patron of winemakers. His festivals, the Dionysia, eventually birthed something else. Theater, tragedy, comedy. All of it began here, under his watchful, wine-clouded gaze. Fringe tidbit? Some Dionysian cults believe that wine was quite literally the blood of the god. Not metaphor, not poetry, literally Dionysus in liquid form. Drinking wasn't just fun, it was communion. Each sip brought you closer to him, not metaphorically, but spiritually, cellularly, emerging. Historians still argue whether early Christian Eucharist rituals were influenced by Dionysian rites. Bread and wine, body and blood, divine consumption. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Ancient religions borrowed liberally from each other, and wine, divine or otherwise, was always flowing. Back on the island, Dionysus walks ahead of you, arms stretched lazily behind his head. A group of women in gauzy robes approach, laughing, carrying baskets of figs, olives, and fresh bread. One of them stops, kisses his cheek, and twirls away. They don't bow. They don't kneel. They dance around him like he's their favorite brother returning from a long journey. He accepts it all like air. You're offered wine without a word. The cup is carved from dark wood, worn smooth. You take it. It tastes like nothing and everything. Childhood, fireplaces, forgotten kisses, storms. You blink, and for a moment, you're somewhere else, running barefoot through grass, holding someone's hand. Then it's gone. You look around. No one's watching you. No one cares that you're a stranger. There is no sermon, no altar call, just being. Music without instruments, smiles without reasons. You wander through the vines. The grapes practically pulse with life. One bursts beneath your fingers and stains your palm like ink. You hear laughter behind you and turn, just in time to see Dionysus vault effortlessly onto a table, arms wide, robes flaring like wings. Do you know why wine is sacred? He shouts to no one and everyone. They pause, a hush, a moment. Because it makes you feel, he says. Too much sometimes, but it strips the varnish off the world, shows you the cracks and the stars inside those cracks. The crowd erupts, not in applause, but howling joy. Someone tosses a wreath, another flings themselves into a cart of figs. And you laugh, for the first time in hours, days, maybe years. And that's when it happens. The air ripples, the sky shifts. You hear it before you see it, singing, low, rhythmic, not words, just sound. From the sea, you rush to the edge of the vineyard, feet pounding dry earth, and look down the cliff. There they are, the dolphins again. But they're not swimming, they're dancing, forming slow spirals, circling each other, tails lifting just above the waves. The sound they make is strange and beautiful and deeply sad, a song only the ocean could understand. You turn to Dionysus, now standing beside you, quiet for once. Do they remember, you ask? His eyes shimmer. Enough, he says. Enough to keep them kind. The waves crash gently below. The laughter fades behind you. And for a moment, just a moment, you understand the poetry of punishment. You sit alone now, just above the vineyard, where the land dips into a soft cliff that watches over the sea. The wine still hums in your bloodstream, warm and slow like liquid velvet. Dionysus has vanished again. He tends to do that. One moment spinning a fig on one finger like a coin, the next gone, as if the breeze carried him into myth. But you don't mind. The dolphins are still out there, and somehow their presence feels protective, like they're keeping watch not out of obligation, but out of something deeper, something earned. Then from the path behind you, light footsteps. A woman appears barefoot, robes streaked with wine and crushed petals, a wreath of olive leaves tangled in her curls. She lowers herself beside you, grinning. He hasn't turned you into anything yet, she says, elbowing you gently. That's promising. You glance at her. Should I be worried? She shrugs. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how attached you are to your current shape. She offers you a fig. You accept it, mostly to be polite, then eat the whole thing in 2 bites. It's ripe to the point of collapse. Sweet and dark. When you look back up, she's already gone. The island hums, alive with distant song. You stand, brush yourself off, and follow the narrow trail that winds through the vineyard. Grapevines curl like tendrils around ancient columns. Some look like they have grown directly into the stone. You pass altars blackened with old fire, amphorae half buried in moss. A sense of time thickens here. Centuries piled into the soil like sediment. You reach the center of the vineyard, where a stone circle marks what once was a gathering place. It's empty now, save for a single dolphin carved into the rock, its body coiled like it's mid-leap. Beneath it, a name. Theo. You blink. It's not possible. But there it is. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greeks believed in the permanence of transformation. When someone was turned into an animal, a tree, a star, it wasn't reversible. It was mythic justice. The world absorbed them, repurposed them. The story was the sentence. Fringe tidbit? Some isolated fishing villages along the Ionian coast still whisper stories of dolphins that follow boats too closely, circling them in oddly specific numbers. 12, always 12. They say they surface only for certain captains. That they remember. And once in 1937, one supposedly traced the same cargo route every third Tuesday. Just watching. Historians still argue whether such myths served religious or civic purposes. Were they deterrents, moral blueprints, or just stories meant to explain the unexplainable? The way a storm comes out of nowhere, or how a man can vanish at sea, never to be seen again? The wind picks up, rustling the vines like a whisper. Behind you, footsteps, again. You turn and find him, Dionysus, walking toward you slowly. No fanfare, no thunderclaps. Just a man with ancient eyes and wine-stained feet. You found Theo, he says, glancing at the carving. You nod. He was the one who spoke first. They usually are, he replies. The loudest ones, the most certain. They speak the fastest, fall the hardest. You want to ask if Theo deserved this, but the question dies in your throat because you're beginning to understand something that's hard to explain. This isn't punishment, not entirely. It's transformation with meaning. Dionysus sits beside you on the grass, plucks a grape from a nearby vine, and rolls it between his fingers. I don't choose at random, he says. I listen to hearts, to rhythms. I see the cracks inside people and offer them another shape. Sometimes with fins, sometimes with antlers, sometimes with silence. You stare at the carving again. And what do you become? You ask, suddenly bold. He laughs, tossing the grape over his shoulder. Me, he says, I become whatever mortals need. A god, a guest, a danger, a delight. You're about to press further, but he's already standing again. Come, he says, let me show you something else. You follow him down a winding path of marble steps chipped and smoothed by centuries. The light shifts, sun filtered through fig leaves, dappling your skin in warm gold. At the bottom is a terrace overlooking the sea. Laid out on a long stone table are scrolls. Old ones, cracked parchment, faded ink, seals broken long ago. Dionysus gestures casually, like a bored librarian. Most people forget, he says, but I once kept a library, a small one, on another island, just before Athens grew teeth. You blink. You had a library, he nods. Not all of us are thunder and war. Some of us like books, especially the ones too weird to be copied. He picks up a scroll, unrolls it halfway, and shows you a drawing. Not quite a dolphin, not quite a man. Something between, a hybrid. He was the last one to remember his name, Dionysus says quietly. He never spoke again, but he danced. Every year on the same night, he'd surface, leap, then vanish. You run your finger along the edge of the scroll. It smells like brine and myrrh. Do you keep all your story, you ask? I try, he replies, though some rewrite themselves. You close your eyes for a moment. The sea breeze carries a faint melody again. Dolphins, maybe, or the distant echo of a lyre. When you open them, Dionysus is gone. Of course, but the scroll remains in your hands, as real as the mist, as real as the fig still sweet on your tongue. And on the far edge of the vineyard, just before the land slips back into sea, you see a fin rise, pause, and disappear beneath the waves. They're still here, watching, learning, changing. You stay on the terrace long after Dionysus disappears, scroll still in hand, sea stretching endless and blue before you. The ink smudges faintly on your fingers. You wonder if you're holding history or myth, or both layered together like sediment at the bottom of a wine jar. But then you hear something, not footsteps this time, hoofbeats, clop, clop, slow, steady, confident. You turn expecting another of the island's barefoot revelers playing dress-up. But what walks into view is not human, at least not fully. It's a satyr. Goat legs, shaggy fur, a reed pipe tucked into his belt, and eyes that flicker with lazy mischief. He looks you up and down and snorts like someone sizing up a particularly boring dinner guest. You're the new one, he says, scratching his ear with a casual stretch of one hoof. Still smell like doubt. You blink. Excuse me? I mean that nicely, he adds, waving a hand. It'll fade, once you let go. You don't respond, because truthfully, you're not sure what you're doing here anymore. What's the lesson? What's the story? What shape are you supposed to become? The satyr senses your silence and sits on the edge of the table, tail twitching. Let me guess. He hasn't told you the whole thing yet. Just the wine, the dolphins, the spectacle. He leans forward grinning. But you don't get Dionysus if you don't understand madness. And there it is. Mainstream historical fact. Dionysus wasn't just the god of wine and fun. He was also the god of frenzy, of ecstatic loss of control. His Roman name, Bacchus, is where we get the word bacchanal, meaning a wild, drunken revel. But to the Greeks, his madness wasn't disorder. It was truth. Raw, wild truth that the civilized world tried and failed to bury. Fringe tidbit: in certain rites, Dionysian initiates would wear fawn skins and carry thyrsi, long fennel stalks topped with pine cones, and enter trance-like states, often running into the forest at night. Some would howl like wolves. Others claimed they could hear the stars hum. There are even whispers of rituals where initiates swore they had become animals, not metaphorically but bodily, temporarily. Historians still argue whether these rituals involved real hallucinations or theatrical performance. Were they truly altered by wine, music, and chant? or just swept up in the power of group hypnosis? Either way, these experiences were transformative and not always pleasant. Back in the moment, the satyr squints at you, his tone shifting. You know the story of Pentheus? You shake your head, sort of. Maybe, vaguely. He chuckles darkly. Thought so, and he tells it unasked. Pentheus was a king, he says, and like most kings, thought he was cleverer than the gods. Thought Dionysus was a fraud, a troublemaker, banned his rights, mocked the women who followed him, laughed at the idea that a god would wear makeup. The satyr spits the word like a curse. So Dionysus did what he does best. He gave Pentheus what he wanted. Let him spy. Gave him the illusion of control. Even dressed him like a woman so he could sneak into the rituals undetected. He pauses, grins. Pentheus thought he was watching madness, but the madness was watching him. Your skin prickles. He was torn apart, the satyr finishes, voice low, by the women he mocked, by his own mother, Agave. She didn't recognize him, thought he was a lion. They all did. You exhale slowly. That's horrifying, the satyr shrugs. It was fair. The silence afterward isn't awkward, it's weighty. You look out at the sea again. The waves have shifted, darker now, like they've heard the story too. You can't help but picture Pentheus, face frozen in shock, crown askew, realizing far too late that Dionysus doesn't forgive. He teaches. The satyr hops off the table and stretches, bones cracking like branches. Anyway, he says, already wandering off, don't worry, that part of him doesn't show up unless he's really insulted. Comforting, you mutter. He waves without turning. Enjoy the island while it lasts. Places like this tend to dissolve once you learn too much. And then he's gone. Hooves clopping down a path that wasn't there before. You linger a while longer, letting the story settle. Madness, transformation, punishment. It's all tangled together, like vines in a forgotten vineyard. And somewhere in the spaces between those things, revelation. It strikes you that Dionysus isn't interested in obedience. He doesn't want temples or prayers. He wants surrender, not to him, but to the truth inside you. The part you bury, the part that only rises in dreams, or drunken honesty, or during a storm when you're screaming just to hear your own voice. You don't realize you've stood up until your knees protest. You walk toward the cliff again. The carving of Theo still waits. The sea still whispers. And then, movement. Dolphins again. But this time one breaches, high, graceful, and then spins in the air and laughs. It's not your imagination. The laugh is sharp, familiar, human. You smile. Because it's Theo. Because of course it is, and maybe he's not lost. Not entirely. Maybe he found something freer than any coin purse or cargo hold. Maybe he's dancing. You spend the next hour, or is it a day, wandering the island's vineyard paths in silence. The air tastes like sun-warmed thyme, and the soil has that rich, just-after-rain texture beneath your soles. Every vine seems to hum quietly, as if they're all mid-lullaby. Grapes hang heavy on their stems. Some of them burst underfoot, staining the ground with purple that almost looks like ink. And it's quiet, not dead quiet, alive quiet. The kind of silence that breathes with the trees, with the distant waves, with something deeper. Then just as you're beginning to relax, you hear it again. Music. But this time it's not laughter or drums. It's a flute. A single, reedy flute, off in the hills. And your feet start moving before you realize. The path curves and narrows, framed by olive trees that lean in like gossiping old women. Their shadows are cool, flickering like candlelight. Eventually you come upon a clearing, sun-drenched and quiet, except for the slow melody of that flute. There, reclining against a tree, is a man, except not quite. His eyes are too large, his smile too knowing, his presence too still. Dionysus, again. He looks younger now, though that might just be the light. His hair's tied back in a loose knot, and he wears a simple tunic, no thyrsus in sight. Just a cup of wine in his hand and a smirk that suggests he's been waiting for you since long before you arrived. Found the music, he says, gesturing lazily toward the flute, which curiously you now notice is just lying on a rock, unattended. You nod, unsure what's expected of you anymore. Was that for me? He tilts his head. Maybe. Or maybe the island plays its own tunes when it wants to. You sit beside him without being invited. He doesn't seem to mind. You notice now that the wine in his cup doesn't move, not even as he tips it slightly. It's as though the liquid answers only to him. Mainstream historical fact. The cult of Dionysus, especially in its early forms, was less about formality and more about feeling. These weren't stiff, robe-wearing priests reciting chants. These were ecstatic worshippers who sang, danced, wept, and screamed their way into communion with their god. It wasn't performative, it was personal, raw, real. Fringe tidbit: some of the earliest festivals to Dionysus weren't public at all. They were private gatherings held by groups of women known as maenads, literally raving ones. These women would enter wooded areas in the dead of night, drink wine, and perform rites that allegedly allowed them to tear wild animals limb from limb with their bare hands. Whether that actually happened or not is debated. Historians still argue whether monadic frenzy was genuine possession or dramatic ritual. Was it theater? Was it group psychology? Was it real madness brought on by wine and song? And more intriguingly, was it empowering? Some suggest these rites gave women a rare taste of freedom in a society that offered them little else. Back in the clearing, Dionysus takes a sip from his unmoving cup. You've heard of the maenads, yes? You nod. Some? The wild ones? He chuckles. That's one way of putting it. But they weren't just drunk women screaming in the woods. They were vessels for truth, for grief, for freedom. He looks at you, suddenly serious. You think civilization is tidy, that it keeps people safe. But most of what you call sanity is just learned silence. You blink. You mean rules? I mean cages, he says, leaning in. You've built such pretty ones. With your schedules, your polite conversations, your quiet dinners. But when was the last time you howled? Really howled? You have no answer. He sits back, satisfied. That's what my rights offered. A door, a scream-shaped key. You close your eyes, unsure if you are offended or enlightened. You don't have to break, he says gently. You just have to bend. Even vines know that. You lie back on the grass. The sky above is almost too blue. One cloud drifts lazily overhead, shaped, strangely, like a mask. Maybe tragedy, maybe comedy, or maybe both at once. Dionysus doesn't speak again, but you feel him there, humming quietly, the wine scent curling through the air like incense. You begin to wonder if madness isn't always chaos, if sometimes it's clarity, unfiltered, unapologetic. You wonder if the women in the forest weren't raving, but reclaiming. You wonder what you might become if you stop trying to hold yourself together. And then, wind, warm and sudden, lifting your hair and carrying something else with it. Laughter. Wild, joyous, messy laughter, rising from the hills like smoke. A procession. You can hear it now. Bare feet on stone, tambourines, flutes, a voice chanting a name you can't quite make out but feel in your bones. Dionysus stands. You should see this, he says simply. You rise with him. You follow the sound down the slope, past the olive trees, into the open sun. And there, pouring out of the vineyard paths like river water, comes a wave of people, some draped in flowers, some in animal skins, some bare-chested, arms painted with vine patterns. All of them dancing, spinning, singing. You spot a child riding on a satyr's shoulders, laughing so hard he nearly falls off. An old woman twirling with a cup in each hand. Two young men balancing on a barrel, juggling grapes. No one is leading, no one is watching, no one is ashamed. You stand in the grass, frozen, until Dionysus looks at you and asks softly, "Why aren't you dancing?" You don't have a good answer. So you step forward and join. The first thing you learn about dancing in a Dionysian procession, there are no steps. You try for the first few seconds to follow someone, anyone, but the rhythm shifts too fast. A young man with gold dust in his beard spins past you, arms raised. A woman in a tunic dyed the color of storm water grabs your hand, twirls you in a circle, and then vanishes into the sea of revelers like mist. There's no choreography, only motion, and it's enough. You begin to laugh, first from awkwardness, then from release. It's ridiculous, beautiful. The sun above flickers through grapevine canopies. Someone behind you plays a drum that doesn't quite keep time, but somehow feels perfect. You glance sideways. Dionysus isn't dancing. He's watching. Seated now on a fallen column, he swirls wine in a goblet and studies the scene like a theater director whose cast has finally gone off script. His smile is soft, almost nostalgic. And you realize something else. He doesn't need to dance. He is the dance. This, the chaos, the joy, the frenzy, is his language, his shrine, his truth. Mainstream historical fact. The Greater Dionysia was one of Athens' biggest festivals, a multi-day celebration where citizens gathered to perform and watch plays, tragedies and comedies alike, in open-air theaters. The performances were sacred. The audience? Half-drunk philosophers, politicians, and farmers. It was theater as ritual, laughter and tears as offerings. Fringe tidbit? Some records suggest that during certain rites, participants would drink unmixed wine, an act the Greeks normally found barbaric. Wine was always diluted with water in daily life, but not here. Here the goal was to lose the line between clarity and intoxication, to dissolve politely framed identity into something messier, truer. Historians still argue whether the Bacchic rites were liberation or danger. Were they spiritual awakenings or socially sanctioned madness? Was Dionysus a healer of repression or a destroyer of boundaries that should never have been crossed? No consensus, no easy answers, which fittingly is the most Dionysian answer of all. Back in the procession, you've stopped thinking. You're moving, spinning, clapping. Your feet, now caked in dust and grape skins, carry you with surprising ease. You pass under an archway woven with ivy and fig branches. Beyond it, a long table, food piled high, cheese, olives, honey-drizzled pastries. Clay pitchers steaming faintly with warm wine. No guards, no hosts, just invitation. Someone hands you a fig, another a wreath of myrtle to wear. You accept both. Why not? You sit and eat and listen. All around, conversations bloom like wildflowers. A woman recounts a dream she had where she turned into a tree and liked it. A boy insists he saw a star fall into the ocean and become a jellyfish. An older man argues that dolphins used to be poets, punished for using rhyme in war. None of it makes sense. All of it feels true. You pour yourself wine, and for a moment, the cup is too heavy. Not physically, emotionally, like it carries more than drink. You sip anyway. Then the sky dims. Not with clouds, but with something heavier. Dionysus stands again. His robe, so light before, is now darker, shadowed. His hair tangled with black vines. His eyes no longer sparkle. They smolder. The party doesn't stop, but it slows. The drumbeat changes, steadier now. Less dance, more heartbeat. And he speaks, not loudly, but everyone hears. Do you know what happens when mortals drink too deeply of gods? No one answers. Even the wind holds its breath. They see, he continues, not just joy, but truth. And truth is not always kind. You suddenly feel too warm. Ask Pentheus, he says. Ask Orpheus. Ask the man who saw me walk the shore and thought me drunk. The revelers grow quiet. A woman weeps quietly. A satyr chews on a vine like it's a nervous tick. But truth, Dionysus says, isn't a punishment. It's a mirror. You don't like what you see? That's not my fault. He lifts his goblet and tosses its contents into the air. The liquid turns into butterflies. Hundreds of them. They scatter in all directions, landing on shoulders, fingertips, foreheads. A child squeals in delight. An elder bows her head in silent prayer. Then a single figure steps forward. You don't know him. A boy, maybe 16, barefoot, simple clothes, no wreath, no wine. He walks to Dionysus and kneels. Change me, he says. The crowd gasps. Dionysus tilts his head. Into what? The boy hesitates. Into someone free. The god's smile returns. Not gentle, not cruel, just vast. Then drink, he says. He places a cup in the boy's hand. The boy drinks and collapses, gasps, cries. A few people lurch forward. But Dionysus raises one finger. The boy twitches, then rolls onto his back, laughing. Not maniacally, not wildly, but peacefully. Like someone who just put down a heavy burden. He stands. His eyes are different now. Brighter. Less afraid. He joins the crowd. Dionysus turns to you. No words. Just a look. Your turn? And you know deep in your bones this is the pattern. The rite, the dance, the laugh, cry, surrender, laugh, again spiral that never really ends. You raise your own cup. You don't ask what's in it. You drink. And for a moment, you forget what shape you used to be. You don't remember falling asleep. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you just dissolved. Because when you blink again, the table is gone. The dancers, the wine, the flute, vanished. The field is empty. The vines still curl through the soil, but they're quieter now, more restrained. The sky is flat and gray, like a painting drained of color. You're alone, except for the stone walls rising around you, columned, heavy, and cold. You recognize this place somehow. It's not the island anymore. It's Thebes, or what's left of it. You hear the shouting before you see them. A crowd, angrily murmuring. Soldiers, shields glinting, royal banners snapping in the dry wind. And at the center of it all, standing on a raised platform with the stiffness of someone trying far too hard to appear calm, King Pentheus. He's younger than you expected. Broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, robes pressed to perfection, the kind of man who has never spilled wine on himself by accident or danced. Blasphemy, he declares, voice clear, sharp, memorized. This man, this impostor, desecrates our laws. He brings shame to our daughters, madness to our mothers. We will not bow to chaos. He's holding something, broken stalks of fennel, a torn wreath, evidence of the gods' growing cult. His mouth curls like he just tasted something bitter. You don't know why you're here, but you watch. You must watch. Then through the gates Dionysus appears, unchained, unhurried, unbothered. He wears a simple tunic. A delicate circlet of ivy rests on his brow. He carries no weapon, just a look that says, I warned you. Mainstream historical fact. The myth of King Pentheus and Dionysus is told most famously in Euripides' The Bacchae, a tragedy first performed in Athens around 405 BCE. It's one of the darkest and most complex examinations of divine vengeance in Greek literature. Dionysus is not just a playful god there. He's terrifying, beautiful and terrible. The ultimate embodiment of retribution cloaked in silk and laughter. Fringe tidbit? In some lesser-known versions of the story, Dionysus doesn't disguise himself as a mortal to infiltrate Thebes. Instead, he appears as a vision, seen only by women driven into frenzy. These versions are darker, dreamlike, more abstract. Less man, more force. A whisper in the forest that turns into a scream. Historians still argue whether the Bacchae was meant to be a cautionary tale about impiety or a secret nod of admiration for Dionysus's power to undo the rigid masculinity of kings. Some interpret it as a warning to balance order and emotion. Others see it as an invitation to lose control once in a while. Lest control consume you. Back in the square, Dionysus stands silent while Pentheus rants. He speaks of loyalty, of law, of tradition. His voice grows louder, more desperate. But Dionysus smiles. You wish to see the rights? He asks gently. Pentheus narrows his eyes. To expose them? Yes. Then you must go in disguise. A murmur ripples through the crowd. The king, in disguise. But Dionysus steps forward, places a hand on Pentheus's shoulder, and something shifts. You can feel it, the moment his mind cracks. Pentheus blinks rapidly. The bravado drains from his face. His fists clench and unclench. What would I wear? He asks, voice suddenly quieter. And the trap clicks shut. You follow them, or maybe become them, as Dionysus leads the king away from the city, down a path lined with dry reeds and fig trees. The wind smells of smoke. Far in the distance, you hear women singing. Pentheus walks barefoot now. His robes are lighter, looser. He adjusts a veil over his hair, stumbles once. Not too much, Dionysus coos. Just enough to be unseen. The king nods, entranced, like he's already forgotten who he is. At the edge of a forest, Dionysus stops. This is where I leave you, he says. Pentheus turns, uncertain. You're not coming? I've shown you the door, Dionysus says. Step through or don't. And then he disappears into the vines. The king hesitates, then enters. You don't see the tearing. You don't hear the screams, but you feel it. The moment when recognition slips. When a mother forgets her son. When joy curdles into frenzy, you're back on the island. The sky is blue again, and Dionysus is beside you, sipping from a wine-dark cup, legs dangling over a stone ledge. Justice? he says quietly. Not revenge. Not really. You don't speak. Pentheus wasn't evil, he continues. He was frightened. Men like him always are. They build walls around their minds. When someone shows them what's beyond those walls, they panic. You think of the broken fennel stalk, the torn wreath, the boy in disguise. Did he deserve it, you ask? Dionysus turns to you. I gave him exactly what he asked for. And you believe him, because that's how it works here. On this island, in this myth, with this god, you are not punished for your actions. You are transformed by your desires. It's night again. Somehow, always night, when the deeper truths slip past the cracks in your thoughts. The air is warmer now, almost humid. You stand in a different part of the island, near a stone amphitheater, its steps carved right into the hillside, facing a bay where the water reflects stars like shattered pearls. There's no crowd yet, no chorus, just you and Dionysus, seated near the center of the front row, arms stretched across the back of the bench like he owns the place, which, let's be real, he probably does. He glances over. Have you ever seen a play? He asks. You nod. A few? Greek tragedy? You pause. A few, in translation. He smiles like you just admitted you've only ever drunk boxed wine. Well, tonight's performance is one of mine, he says. An original. You open your mouth to ask if it's the Bacchae again, but before you can say anything, the torches lining the stage flicker to life all at once. Humph, and the amphitheater begins to fill. Not with people, not exactly. Shadows, figures in masks, pale white, one half smiling, one half weeping. They move without speaking, gliding, floating, arranging themselves in the chorus, the wings, the stairways. Dionysus lifts a finger and a single drum beat echoes across the space. Boom. Then silence. Then the masks speak. But not with voices. They speak through you. Images, feelings, memories you're not sure are yours. A marketplace at dawn, a child singing to herself, a fight you once had where you said too much, or maybe not enough. The theater becomes a mirror, a deeply uncomfortable one. Drama, Dionysus murmurs, means to do, to act, to choose. It's not about happy endings, it's about revealing. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greek theater was more than entertainment. It was civic duty. Citizens were expected to attend, to watch, to reflect. The earliest plays were performed during religious festivals, especially the city Dionysia in Athens, where dramatists competed for honor and public scrutiny. Tragedy wasn't about despair. It was about learning through watching someone else fall. Fringe tidbit? Some scholars believe that theater originated in Dionysian ritual, that the first actors were simply priests wearing masks, reenacting divine myths during nighttime forest ceremonies. Over time, the dance evolved into dialogue, the priest into performer, and Dionysus became the god of not just ecstasy, but performance itself. Historians still argue how literal that origin story is. Was Greek drama a direct evolution of religious ecstasy, or did it arise separately? Some point to the chorus as a surviving link, the collective voice that bridges God and mortal, emotion and structure. Back in the amphitheater, the play unfolds. There's no script, not really. Just archetypes moving through the cycles. The king with hubris, the woman in mourning, the chorus of doubt, the divine visitor who is not what he seems. It's all familiar because it's all of us. You watch, heart in your throat, as a masked figure steps forward. The stranger. His mask is blank. His robe, deep wine purple. He speaks in riddles. His presence unsettles everyone on stage. He challenges their values, their laws. He dances when no one else does. And they hate him for it, and invite him to stay, and then beg him to leave. He grants them neither. The audience, what little there is, watches in reverent silence. You can feel something deep shifting inside you. Not understanding exactly, but awareness. Dionysus stands and walks slowly onto the stage. The other figures freeze. He turns to you and removes his mask, except he wasn't wearing one. And yet somehow you still feel as if something has fallen away. You see him now, really see him. Not just a god, not just a myth, but a presence that makes room for contradiction, gentleness with violence, joy with destruction, ecstasy with grief. Do you understand now? He asks, not with his voice, but with his presence. And for the first time, maybe, you do. The theater darkens. The shadows dissolve. And you're alone again on the marble steps, breathing heavily, like you just woke from a dream that left fingerprints on your soul. Dionysus sits beside you, back in his usual form. Cup in hand, no mask, no theater, just him. Performance is truth, he says. People always think it's the opposite, that acting is lying. But when you wear a mask, you finally get to stop pretending. And when you stop pretending, he gestures toward you. You finally speak. You look at your hands, they're shaking. He doesn't comment. Instead, he pours more wine and hands you the cup. You don't ask what it means. You just drink and feel the silence of the theater echo inside your ribs, not empty, just waiting. The next morning, if it is morning, arrives gently. No trumpets, no transformation, just soft light spilling through olive branches and the faint scent of rosemary on the breeze. You find yourself in a grove dotted with marble ruins, columns broken in half, vine-choked walls, and something that might have once been a temple now claimed by moss and time. You stretch. Your joints ache, not from sleep, but from stories. You're full of them now. You feel it. They hang behind your ribs like curtains not quite drawn. Dionysus is not here, but someone else's. At the center of the grove sits a statue, half covered in ivy, but unmistakably beautiful. Not regal, not heroic. Just tender. A young man carved in soft lines, leaning back against a wineskin, smiling slightly like someone who knows a secret but won't tell. A name is chiseled faintly beneath the stone feet. Ampelos. You whisper it aloud and the grove shifts, barely. Then footsteps behind you. Familiar. Barefoot, of course. Ah, Dionysus says softly. You found him. He moves beside you, his face unreadable for once. I thought he was just a myth, you say. He nods. He was. And then he wasn't. He places a hand on the statue's shoulder. Do you want to know what grief tastes like? He asks. Like the first wine. Too sweet. Too new. It doesn't comfort. It dizzies. And then he tells the story. Ampelos was beautiful. Even the gods admitted it. A boy of Thrace. Young, wild, radiant. He could ride any beast, climb any tree, leap into any river and come out laughing. Dionysus adored him. Not in the way mortals adore. Not in the way stories like to flatten love into labels. He adored him. Ampelos was bold. He teased the god, raced him, outdrank him once, or claimed he did. He believed he was untouchable. And why wouldn't he? When a god walks beside you, you believe you're made of lightning. But one morning, he saw a bull grazing on a sunlit slope. Sleek, black, powerful. I could ride that, he said. Dionysus warned him. That one belongs to Selene, the moon goddess. Gentle, yes, but possessive. Not to be crossed. Ampelos laughed. So, I belong to no one. He leapt onto the bull's back and was thrown, neck broken, spine twisted, youth shattered like pottery on stone. Mainstream historical fact. The Greeks were not shy about weaving tragedy into their myths, even when it came to the gods themselves. Dionysus, despite his divinity, is one of the only Olympians portrayed as mourning, deeply, repeatedly. His mythology is soaked in love and loss, often entangled in the same vine. Fringe tidbit. In some variants of the story, Dionysus begged the fates to reverse Ampelos' death. When they refused, he cursed the stars. In others, he found the body, cradled it for days, and where his tears fell, grapevines grew. In one whispered version, he gave up part of his own divinity to resurrect the boy, not as flesh, but as fruit. Historians still argue whether the Ampelos myth is purely symbolic, an origin story for wine, or a hidden reference to real early Dionysian mourning rituals. Was wine sacred because it fermented grief? Was drinking a ritual of remembrance? Back in the grove, Dionysus kneels beside the statue. His hand trails the carved cheek with a tenderness that makes your throat tighten. He became the first vine, Dionysus says, not because I cursed him, but because I loved him. You sit beside him. He died, you say, because he was reckless. Dionysus chuckles. Of course, so are all beautiful things. That's why they don't last. The ivy on the statue blooms suddenly, tiny green leaves curling open, shy and trembling. Dionysus stands again, brushes dust from his knees. People think wine is about pleasure, he says, but really it's about memory, fermented time. Nothing lasts, not even sweetness, especially not sweetness. You watch as he walks through the grove, every step pressing a little more green into the earth. You follow. The statue watches. You return to the edge of the vineyard. A low stone wall overlooks the beach below. Dolphins still circle, their patterns slower now. Meditative. Do you regret it, you ask? He pauses, doesn't turn around. What? The transformations, the stories, the grief. Dionysus exhales through his nose, then finally faces you. There's no mischief in him now. I don't regret the truth, he says. Only the time it takes mortals to accept it. He offers you a grape. You eat it, it's bitter, but only for a moment. Then comes the sweetness. Then something else, richer, sadder. You don't ask what it is, because now you understand. This island, this journey isn't about escape. It's about remembrance. The boy who became a vine, the pirates who became dolphins, the king who became a warning, the laughter and the loss, the frenzy and the silence. All of it, true, all of it. Dionysus. The sun dips lower now, touching the sea with gold. You sit at the shoreline, knees drawn to your chest, toes dug into cool sand the color of ancient parchment. For the first time, Dionysus doesn't hover nearby. He's somewhere inland, maybe watching, maybe letting you breathe. You watch the dolphins. Their arcs are slower this evening, quieter. Their chittering echoes over the water, playful but somehow elegiac, as if they know something is ending, or maybe beginning. Then just at the edge of your vision, a shape, different from the others. Not slick and curved like the others. It swims lazily near the boat that brought you here. Yes, that boat. Still tethered to a bent wooden dock. The ship that once held pirates and gods, now half covered in vines, the sails patched with fig leaves. A relic turned monument. You squint. It's a dolphin, yes, but not quite. It moves less like an animal, more like someone remembering how to swim. You rise, step toward the edge of the dock. The water below is clear, and what you see sends a soft chill up your spine. A man, but not a man, or perhaps a dolphin who used to be a man. His back breaks the surface. His shoulders are too broad. His flipper, not quite symmetrical. A tattoo, faded but unmistakable, circles one side like a rope. You've seen that design before. On the ship, on Theo. But he dives again before you can call out. So you sit and wait, and that's when you hear footsteps. You glance back and see Dionysus approaching, a bottle of wine tucked under one arm and 2 cups dangling from the fingers of his other hand. I wondered when he'd show, he says, settling beside you. That was Theo, wasn't it? He nods. The only one who didn't jump immediately. Tried to climb back up. Fought the change. Did he make it? Dionysus pours the wine into both cups and hands you one. Define make. You sip. It's deeper now, earthier. Tastes like rain and bark and endings. He visits, Dionysus continues, twice a year, when the tide's low and the wine's fermenting just right. Never stays long. You look at the spot where Theo vanished again. Does he remember? I think he remembers trying to remember, Dionysus says, which might be worse. Mainstream historical fact. The Greeks believed the soul, psyche, didn't vanish after death or transformation. It lingered, changed form, moved to another state of being. They built myths not just to explain life, but to trace how identity persisted beyond flesh. Metamorphosis wasn't a loss of self, but a shift in its definition. Fringe tidbit? A few surviving fragments from obscure poets suggest that dolphins were once seen as guardians of lost knowledge, that sailors who drowned and were reborn as dolphins didn't just survive, they remembered. They became sea messengers, carrying stories between islands, whispering truths in bubble trails. Historians still argue whether this belief was widespread or local lore, but carved dolphins appear often in temple friezes, always looking upward, never down. You sip your wine again. So, what happened to the others, you ask? The rest of the pirates? They swam, Dionysus replies. Some still do. Some sank. Some became something else entirely. Not all transformations are so aquatic. You turn to him. Meaning? he smiles. Some became vines. Some became winds. One turned into a fog that never lifts from a particular island in the northern Aegean. You wait for a laugh. There isn't one. That's the thing about myths, he says softly. People think they're made up, but really they're what's left when something real gets forgotten. You both fall silent. The sky darkens. Stars begin their slow parade across the heavens. You find yourself staring at the boat again. Its hull, once polished and hungry, now softened by time and ivy. It doesn't look like a trap anymore. It looks like a memory. Can it sail again, you ask? Dionysus shrugs. Maybe, if it wants to. You tilt your head. Boats want things? Everything wants something, he says and takes another sip. Some things want to be forgiven. Some want to be remembered. That one just wants to float. You stare at the ship, wondering what you want. Do you want to stay? Do you want to return? And if you did return, who would you be? You're no longer the same person who boarded that boat. You're softer, fuller, less certain, and weirdly okay with it. You look back out to see Theo surfaces one more time, turns his head toward the island, toward you, and clicks softly. A sound like a question. Or a thank you. Then he dives. You don't see him again. But somehow that feels right. Dionysus refills your cup and doesn't say a word. Neither do you. You both sit, watching the boat, and let the night breathe around you like a lullaby written in waves. By now you've stopped trying to predict how the island moves. Paths appear where before there was scrub. Trees lean differently depending on your thoughts. The sun seems to slow when you're listening and hurry when you're not. And Dionysus is both everywhere and nowhere, like a familiar scent you can't name. Today you find yourself near a grove of pines that lean in odd directions, as if once drunk on their own roots. Between them, there's a stone bench, weathered smooth. A single scroll lies atop it, sealed with red wax shaped like a grape leaf. You hesitate, then break the seal. Inside is not a myth, not a commandment, not poetry, though it flirts with verse. It's a question. Where does the story end, and where does it begin again? You sit, scroll on your lap, and stare at the sea. Again, always the sea. Behind you, a voice, this time not Dionysus's. An old man in a robe the color of smoke. Long beard, parchment hands, eyes like cracked eggshells. He carries no staff, no crown. Just a bundle of scrolls, each tied neatly with black twine. He nods at the bench. You've met the god. You nod. He's not what they say, the man mutters, almost to himself. No, you agree. He's more. The man looks at you. Then let me tell you how his story was told. And just like that, you're in a library. Not metaphorically, a real one, or at least real enough. Columns spiral toward a ceiling painted like twilight. Scrolls stacked in strange geometries. Candles suspended midair, burning without smoke. At the center of the floor is a large bronze compass, its arrow spinning slowly in a circle, as though time itself can't decide where it's going. This is where the myths were edited, the old man says. Polished, bowdlerized, given endings the philosophers could swallow. He guides you past shelves marked with strange symbols. One scroll reads, Dionysus, version A, the eccentric. Another, version B, the dangerous. Another, version C, the mistake. These, the man continues, are not the stories themselves. These are how mortals tried to make sense of him. He pulls one and unrolls it. The words inside dance. They refuse to settle. Mainstream historical fact. Dionysus's mythology is full of contradictions. In some places, he's called the youngest of the Olympians. In others, he predates Zeus himself. Some say he was raised in the East. Others claim Nysa, a fictional paradise, was his childhood home. His myths were told, retold, and twisted by every city-state with an opinion. Fringe tidbit. A few scraps from a lost play suggest that Dionysus once tried to retire, to live anonymously among mortals and abandon godhood altogether. It didn't go well. Crops failed. Storms rose. People went mad from their own repressed desires. He returned, not out of vanity, but necessity. Historians still argue whether Dionysus represents chaos intruding on order, or balance restored when order becomes tyranny. Some say he's the knife at the throat of empire. Others call him the whisper behind every revolution. The old man hands you a blank scroll. Add your version, he says. You laugh, uncertain. I'm not a scribe. Neither were the first ones. You hesitate, then write, he turned pirates into dolphins, but he turned listeners into mirrors. The old man nods. That will do. When you leave the library, the landscape has changed again. You're in a courtyard now, open to the sea, the sky, the wind. Vines creep along every edge, but not threateningly. They hold the place together. You think maybe they always have. Dionysus waits there. He's dressed plainly today. Tunic, sandals, no wreath, no wine. He could be a farmer, a teacher, someone you'd pass without a second glance, until he looked at you. Learn anything, he asks, amused. A few things, you reply. Mostly that no one agrees on who you are. He grins. Good. Why? Because I'm not one thing, he says. Never have been, never will be. That's the problem with most gods. They get stuck. Statues, sermons, predictable. He steps closer. I prefer being remembered differently. You nod slowly. And you don't mind the contradictions? He shrugs. Contradictions are just truths that got impatient. You don't quite understand, but you're beginning to feel like that's the point. You sit together in silence. The dolphins leap again in the distance. Their songs drift over the wind like something lost and found at the same time. And then Dionysus turns to you softly. Not everyone who meets me tells the story right. They focus on the madness, the wine, the antics. He gestures loosely. But you stayed. You watched. You listened. You feel your throat tighten. So here, he says, holding something out. It's not a cup, it's a mask. Plain, smooth, half smile, half frown. Wood grain like the lines of a palm. Take it, he says, for when you need to be something else, for when you need to say something else. You accept it. It's heavier than it looks. He stands. One more stop, he says, and walks back toward the boat. You walk behind him in silence, the mask still warm in your hands. The path to the shore is clearer now. No vines clawing across it, no theatrical fog. Just dry earth beneath your feet and the steady hush of the sea. The ship waits in the cove, not glimmering or magical, just ready. The kind of vessel that knows it's carried strange things before, and will again. Dionysus steps onto the dock first. He turns halfway and extends a hand, not offering help exactly, but acknowledgement. You climb aboard. The wood creaks familiarly under your weight. It feels like stepping back into your own skin, only now you're aware of its seams. I'm not going with you, he says, tying off the mooring with one lazy loop. This part's yours. You blink. You're staying? He smiles. I never leave. I just move. He walks the length of the ship once, dragging a finger along the rail, whispering something that might be words, might be prayer, might be wine song. Then he stops at the helm, looks out to sea. You won't remember everything, he says. No one does, but some things will linger. Like what? The taste of a fig, the sound of a dolphin calling your name, that moment when a mask fits better than your own face. You look down at the object in your hands again. It doesn't frighten you anymore. Mainstream historical fact. Dionysus was the patron of travelers between worlds. Earth and Olympus, sanity and madness, human and divine. His festivals marked seasonal change. His rites coincided with planting and harvest. He was a god of transitions, birth and death, stage and audience, mask and soul. Fringe tidbit. Some ancient inscriptions refer to Dionysus not just as a god, but as a guide, a psychopomp, like Hermes. Not of roads, but of emotional thresholds. The god who held your hand when your reflection no longer looked like you. Historians still argue why Dionysus inspires both devotion and discomfort. Some say it's because he's too mortal, born of a human mother. Others say it's because he reflects too much of us back at ourselves. Dionysus sits now at the edge of the boat, feet dangling just above the water. A dolphin breaches in the distance. You both turn toward the sound. Will I see them again, you ask? Of course, he replies. Every time you forgive yourself, every time you stop pretending, every time you let go. You want to ask more, but the wind shifts. The sail catches. The boat begins to move. He doesn't wave, neither do you. Instead, he lifts his cup one final time, empty, yet somehow full, and toasts you silently. You nod, and the island begins to shrink behind you. The water shimmers, the air warms. The dolphins follow at a distance, no longer circling, just escorting, companions, witnesses. And you? You stand at the helm, the mast tucked beneath one arm, and breathe. Not with fear, not with doubt, but with readiness. Because whatever world you're sailing back to, it won't look the same, and neither will you. The stars are out now. Faint, flickering. One by one, they settle into place like old friends reclaiming their chairs. The waves beneath the ship have softened to the barest of murmurs, rocking you in slow, quiet pulses. Your breath falls into rhythm with them. Inhale, exhale, like the sea is exhaling through you. You sit down on the deck, spine against the mast, eyes tilted skyward. There's nothing you need to do now. No truths to chase, no gods to fear. Just the memory of a mask in your lap and the faint scent of crushed grapes still clinging to your skin. You close your eyes. And behind your eyelids, you see the vines. Hear the laughter. Feel the weight of a god's gaze resting not with judgment, but with understanding. You remember the dolphins, not as punishment, but as evolution. Not what they were, but what they became. And you smile. Because part of you knows you become something too. The wind cools, the ship glides on, and the story, this winding, wine-dark story, doesn't need to end. It just changes form. So sleep now. Let the sea hold you. Let the myths quiet. Let your breath slow, because you're not lost. You're just between versions of yourself. And somewhere on a faraway shore, a god who never really leaves is smiling, glass raised, whispering, "Good, you listened."